Hey everyone, Lisa Haverly here, Nature Superhero Network. Thanks for tuning in. I'm excited. I'm going to launch this 3-part and maybe 4-part, I'm not sure yet, series on what do we have control over as the occupational therapy interventionist, okay? And of course, the 3 things for sure are going to be very familiar to you because it's really OT 101. But what I'd like to talk to you about is what does that look like, or how does that relate to our nature-based therapy that we do? And so the first thing that we often shift, change, adapt, modify for increased engagement, participation, independence, progress towards goals is the environment. And that we might look at the environment to shift or change it to afford that client to make more progress, right? And so it takes me back to thinking about when I first started my nature-based business. And I would do calls often with caregivers as we would try to determine if their child was a good fit for my program. And I was on the call with a mom and dad who were firing questions at me right and left. What's your qualifications? How much training have you had? What's your philosophy on behavior? And I was like, whoa, okay. So, and I answered all their questions, but it was very clear in their tone and in their questioning me that they were frustrated. They were very frustrated with whatever experiences their child had had up until this conversation. And so they wanted to know, how is your programming different? Why do you think nature can be supportive? Really a lot of questions. And I soon learned quickly into the conversation after it was kind of my turn to ask questions that they were really desperate, that they were in a space of true despair of where does my child fit? School was not successful. He was in a level 4 program, which in the state where he comes from means more self-contained, typically based on behavior, unsafe behaviors. He even got kicked out of private therapy, and I'm really thinking, wow, this child is really struggling. And so I listened and I offered some insight, and you have a lot of control how that conversation will go. And, I didn't go into bashing other contexts. I come from other contexts. I understand how difficult it can be. I understand that sometimes there's a lack of resources. I understand that some other environments can be very overstimulating, which can really influence then behavior. So I went into kind of asking about, tell me about your child. Tell me what the strengths are. Tell me about what he loves to do. And once I kind of, leaned into that kind of questioning, they softened a bit. And then you could really hear the sadness in their voices. Like, where does my child fit? We want him to have friends. We want him to feel happy, that he's frustrated a lot of the time. So, I kind of shared what my programming is. I shared what my programming was not. I said, we are not a 1-to-1 ratio program. I said, but I will tell you this, that this is a different context. So right off the bat, people, we are offering a different context. And you can consider it, a definite change from the context that they might be coming from. And what do we know? We know that research tells us of these inherent beautiful qualities that nature has that really supports our whole self, that it's very holistic in its support. And so I shared with them kind of what I knew about this different context, that it's less stimulating, that sometimes a shift in context can make all the difference. But of course, I made no guarantees, and I don't make any guarantees with any of my programming other than if it's not a good fit, then we'll have a conversation and there might be some refund available, okay? That's the only guarantee. But I can't guarantee for every child that it's going to be successful. And so that is what I wanted to talk about today, was the context and how the nature context is indeed different. And so then you might say, well, do you ever adapt or modify the nature context? Well, you can. If you have a child that shows up that might have some upregulation and needs more containment, that maybe you have a designated kind of stick shelter or shade under a tree, that could feel like a more, kind of smaller space or more intimate space. And so sure, you can identify different spaces within your nature context that can support different needs of your client. But nature all by itself is profound. And so you're wondering, did this child come to camp? So I said, well, I think we should give it a try. And so he came to camp. And was it perfect? No. But he's been coming to camp now every year since, and this will be his 11th summer. 11th summer. So he has found friends here. He has found success. We have been able to work on some of those social, emotional, social skill type things that then he was able to relate to and interact with peers more, safely, more appropriately. And then what was even cooler is that his parents then bought a cabin in the woods, and that when things are real tough, that they might retreat there, and then he has access to this beautiful nature outdoor space that is really supportive for regulation, and that skipping rocks is kind of his thing to do. And so that just leads me to the notion of how this context can be very generalizable and accessible, really no matter where you are. And I understand the issues of direct access, but for the most part, people have access to some green space. So the context, that is one thing that we have control over. And as nature-based therapists, we've shifted the context completely, okay? But you can still adapt and modify things in nature to meet the needs of your clients. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful as you think about the context, the environment, and how the nature context is a shift all by itself and a very supportive container, supportive space. All right, I would love any comments, thoughts, questions that you might have about this, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And thanks for listening. And I do hope to one day see you down the road. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.